So I get it. The Old Testament is just harder to read than the New Testament. It feels more remote, and it is more difficult to understand. But 3/4 of what the Lord has to say to us, he said in the Old Testament. So it's worth the effort to get better at it. And the place we're at right now, Shiloh, it can help. Two important things happen here, both of which are mentioned in Joshua 18. The whole assembly of the Israelites gathered at Shiloh and set up the tent of meeting there. Now, the worship facility, the Jerusalem before there was a Jerusalem, was here at Shiloh. Second event, there were still 7 Israelite tribes who had not yet received their inheritance. And as a result, Joshua sent explorers out to collect descriptions of the land, and here at Shiloh, Joshua then cast lots for them in the presence of the Lord, and there he distributed the land to the Israelites according to their tribal divisions. And when I think about that land distribution, there's a practical side to that, right? Everyone needed a place to build their house and to pasture their animals and raise their food and dig into the soil to get their water supply. But there was more than a practical need in play here. There was a spiritual need. And we see that if we look at Genesis 12, 1 through 3. In those verses, God promises Abraham and Sarah that their family will become a great nation, and that nation will be given this land, the land of Canaan, and then through that nation, on this land, the blessing lost in Eden would be restored to the world. And when we think about the gospel in the New Testament, we think of the cross and the empty tomb. Those are our symbols. What about in the Old Testament? The cross and empty tomb weren't there, but family and land were. The Apostle Paul in Galatians 3:8 calls this the gospel in advance given to Abraham. And so when each family received their share of the land here at Shiloh, what they were receiving is a symbol that would remind them of God's promise to forgive them. And that's the same promise we meet if we look for that symbol in the Old Testament as well. God forgives people in the Old Testament and in the New Testament in the same way, by a promise that he will not punish for their sins. And when we read the New Testament, we see that symbolized by cross and empty tomb. Read the Old Testament and look for forgiveness symbolized in the land. You'll never read those texts the same again.